Hello friends and welcome back to the Agile Scrum Project Management series. This video is a third part of Scrum artifacts. So far we have gone through the product backlog artifact and we know that the product backlog is a list of all features that we need in a product. But it is not possible to work on all those items in one go. So we need to pick some items that can be worked on in a sprint. So today in this video we will learn about the sprint backlog and see how it is important to sprint success. Here we will discuss what is a sprint backlog, who owns the sprint backlog items, how a sprint backlog is prioritized, followed by is it possible to modify the sprint backlog during a sprint, and finally we will see how a sprint progress is monitored. So let's go ahead and start with the sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is a set of product backlog items that a Scrum team or developers selects for a particular sprint. Whether this selection of the items is usually done during the sprint planning session. The sprint backlog contains everything that the developers or the development team will work on, including user stories, tasks, defect, bugs, improvement areas from previous retrospectives, and other items. The sprint backlog also contains a plan to deliver these items to satisfy the sprint goal. The plan creation is a part of a sprint planning session in which developers prioritize the stories to meet the sprint goal. Where the sprint goal is an objective for a particular sprint, that is basically an outcome of negotiation between the product owner and the developers or development team, which answers some questions like what can be delivered, how long it takes to deliver, and when it has to be delivered. So, a sprint backlog should be a clear list of work items because a clear sprint backlog prevents clarifying what the developers will do and what not during a sprint. Next, let us see who owns the sprint backlog. Well, before jumping into the ownership of the sprint backlog, let us first understand how a sprint backlog is identified. As we know that the product backlog is a prioritized list of all required items and is owned by the product owner. He is the only one who decides the priority of the backlog. The features he would need first in the product will be at the top of the priority. Then, during the sprint planning session, which happens on the very first day of each sprint, the backlog items are selected from the product backlog list to create sprint backlog, in which developers starts picking up prioritized items from the backlog and decide what they can do in the current sprint. Once they finalize the scope, the sprint goal can be defined and modified from what the product owner has initially thought. Then items of the sprint backlog are further broken down into smaller and actionable sprint tasks and assigned to the relevant teams like design team, development team, QA team, and other teams. If a team does not have the capacity to deliver all the sprint tasks, then the remaining sprint tasks will be on standby in the sprint backlog for future sprints. I'm sure by now you must have understood who owns the sprint backlog. Yes, it's the developers or the development team. They are the owner of a sprint backlog. So the developers create the sprint backlog to plan deliverables for future product increments and detail the work required to create that increment. Our next topic is how sprint backlog is prioritized. Since the sprint backlog is a subset of product backlog, where the items of the product backlog list are already prioritized by product owner, so the sprint backlog will automatically be a prioritized list. However, developers can change the priority and decide what stories need to be done first. This can be done based on several factors. For example, some backend tasks of a feature need to be done first as a UI task depends on them. Apart from this, the sprint backlog can also be prioritized based on the skill set needed for the task and the availability of the resources within the sprint. Our next topic is modification of a sprint backlog. Well, as we know that developers are the owner of a sprint backlog, so they can modify the sprint backlog throughout a sprint as soon as they learn more about the work that need to be finished to meet sprint goal. Here, the modification means adding additional details to user stories or adding new tasks. And the most important thing is that this addition should align with the sprint goal. The team doesn't make any changes that don't align with the sprint goal. Next topic is monitoring the sprint backlog. Monitoring a sprint process is important to ensure product increment by the end of each iteration or sprint. It helps team to track their performance, identify bottleneck and make necessary adjustments to meet their sprint goal. Here are some steps to monitor sprint progress effectively. And those are set a clear sprint goal, define key performance indicators or KPIs, use a project management tool, daily scrum meetings, track burn down chart and dashboard, regularly review and update sprint backlog items, conduct sprint reviews, track and analyze sprint matrices like velocity and burn down, followed by retrospective meetings, and finally communicating the progress to all stakeholders. By following these steps, we can effectively monitor sprint progress, identify potential issues, and be able to make informed decisions to keep our project on track. Now let's summarize this video. So in today's video, we understand what the sprint backlog is, who is the owner of sprint backlog, how sprint backlogs are prioritized, followed by the modification and the monitoring of the sprint backlog items. Now we will continue with our Scrum series and will cover the remaining main artifacts in the next video. Till then, thanks for listening. Have a nice day.